Today is April 27th, 2018. The Useful Idiots.
Shut up and sit down.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the greatest show on Earth. We took it from Barnum and Bailey.
I was wondering where you're going with that.
I just kind of go off the top of the head and go with anything. So,
Sounds like your dating life.
come on. I got high standards, Paul.
Uh-huh.
Much higher than you, by the way.
Oh.
Ooh.
Shots
Dang.
fired.
Shots fired. Bang. Wait, what was that again, Paul? You gotta say shots fired again.
Shots fired. Oh.
Okay. That was an unnecessary clip I wanted to run. Okay. So, we are back. Today is April 27th, 2018, and we are going to talk about something, it's a little close to home to me, with me, I should say. I don't think you've had too much of an issue with it, but it's going to be about the police.
I was a
And
good kid.
You were a good kid, and
right.
I thought I was a good kid as well. But
I never thought you were a good kid.
you never thought I was a
No,
good kid?
No, you're a bad kid.
I was quite possibly the most likable person you've ever known.
Oh, totally likable, but then equally disreputable.
I'll accept that.
It's your dichotomy over there.
So we had a situation, and we're going to kind of just start off with one story and then move into a slightly different topic, but it's a good opener for it. We had a situation in New Jersey where an officer, Reuben McCausland, was actually arrested for distributing drugs, including heroin, cocaine, crack cocaine, and marijuana.
The big four.
The big four, especially that marijuana. It's pretty hardcore, isn't it?
Worst thing for you.
Yeah. It's the worst stuff for you. And we kind of have had a situation where we were researching, because we knew that there was a problem with the police. And we're not saying all police here, because we do know a lot of very good police officers, men of the law. And we don't want to have everybody get the sense that we just dislike cops because we're doing this episode.
Yeah, we don't want to bash all police officers. There are just some bad eggs out there.
Yeah, some bad apples. And Reuben is one of those. But we've had a situation where there's actually a lot of stories. And if you go through the news, you'll find many stories every single year of some of these bad seeds, these bad apples, these bad eggs.
Corrupt cops
Who are either selling drugs or protecting criminals, or
Both.
Both, exactly, doing both. And it's very hard to find a lot of information through the law, the government's records. They don't really notate a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
Actually,
they don't want to make it too publicly known.
yeah, and I kind of am offended by that, since we are paying the tax money to go to this monopoly of force.
I was waiting for you to use that that term.
It's true. It's a monopoly of force, but they obviously want to protect themselves, so they do not release a lot of information. But of course, we were able to find some, and specifically truthfully, the most recent paper that I was able to find that was from the what was it called? Government
Accountability
Office. Yeah, the GAO. They released something in 1998. So as you can see, we're going back 20 years. The most recent time I was able to find.
Don't remind me that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, because you were still an old man then.
Oh, no. I was in my prime, 1998.
Prime in 1998? Yeah, I was a baby.
Yeah,
Not
literally.
a baby, but a child. I was a child. And it took 20 years ago. That was the last time I was able to find data of when some examples of publicly disclosed investigations of drug-related police corruption in large cities. So there was a number of them, including our hometown of the Chicagoland, which had 7 officers of the tactical unit of the 15th District who were indicted in December of 1996 on federal charges for allegedly using their positions, skills, and experiences as police officers to rob and extort money and narcotics from drug dealers on Chicago's west side. So that's just like I just kind of wanted to open up with our close to home one there. But there are many other ones, and I'm going to go through a few of them here. So just kind of focus in on some of these incidences where the police officers are corrupt. So we had Atlanta in 1995, where 6 police officers were convicted of and guilty to federal corruption charges stemming from an FBI undercover sting, where 5 other officers were suspended but not charged based off of drug-related corruption. And then we had Cleveland, as a result of an FBI undercover operation, 44 police and sheriff's departments and correction officers from 5 law enforcement agencies being charged in January of 1998 with taking money to protect cocaine trafficking operations in Cleveland and northern Ohio. So 8 officers of them had pled guilty in 1998. Then we have Detroit.
You know what? Hold on.
Go ahead.
Let me just pause you right there.
Yeah.
You know what is an underlying theme that's kind of subtle in all these stories, or at least the ones that you're talking about?
What's that?
Greed.
Yeah.
You know,
A
like-
lot of it stems from greed. These guys have an opportunity.
I mean, police officers, you know, I don't know what all these police officers making all these different areas, but, you know, they want a little extra on the side, and that's like how they do it. I mean, the drugs are right there. You know, humans are tempted.
Yeah, they're
You know?
tempted, and they have a easier pathway to gain this money from the illegal activities than others. There are police on the first hand of this drug money, and they can use their force to any gang members who are selling the drugs to kind of just take in that money. If you can understand what I'm trying to say.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So many more cities. We have Detroit, which, as a result of an FBI undercover operation, undercover operation is kind of a main theme with a lot of these. So it seems like the FBI.
Yeah, the FBI is the one that's going in and watching these police officers and busting them.
Yeah.
Seems.
So 9 officers were charged in Detroit in 1991 with conspiracy to aid and abet the distribution of cocaine, attempted money laundering, and other charges.
Attempted money laundering.
Attempted money laundering, which means they probably were money
I never even
laundering.
heard of that before.
You've never-
Attempted money laundering.
They tried laundering it, but
And then it didn't do so well.
just couldn't. Yeah, they couldn't do it. And then Los Angeles, which is actually a pretty popular issue with a lot of corruption in the police force, in relation to maybe CIA, which
Getting ahead of yourself.
getting ahead of
there.
myself, aren't I? And as a result of an FBI undercover operation, again, 27 sheriff's deputies and 1 police officer were convicted by 1994 for skimming millions of dollars of drug money while members of an elite narcotics unit. Then we have Miami, where the Miami Police Department experienced a series of drug-related cases during the late 80s, which resulted in the arrest, suspension, or punishment of more than 100 officers. Late 80s, over 100 officers. It's
A lot of cocaine.
Yeah, Miami's very well
I'm
known for that.
thinking.
I think Freeway Rick Ross was from Miami, correct?
Was he?
Yeah, he was from Miami. So,
I'm more familiar with his activities in California than Cincinnati.
yeah, I think his headquarters, I think he started in Miami and distributed other places, which everyone should look up Rick Ross. He has some good
Not
interviews.
the rapper.
Yeah, sorry. Huh. Not the rapper.
See, I don't even know what that is.
You know what that is?
No,
Very
like I heard of Freeway Rick Ross before I ever heard of Rick Ross, and it's just funny though. Like, I know I'm putting on my conspiracy hat, but it's almost as if people don't want Freeway Rick Ross to be heard. So then here comes this rapper who chooses the name Rick Ross.
So
Do you
think-
know much about Rick Ross, the rapper?
Yeah. What do you want to know about him?
Why did he choose the name Rick Ross? Did he ever say?
It's just the name, because his whole persona is that he is a huge cocaine dealer. That's what he kind of plays
he?
as a character. No,
So-
he was actually a security at a prison. He was a security officer at a prison, so he had nothing to do with drugs.
So where did this whole persona come from?
From Freeway Rick Ross.
So he just ripped him off.
Yeah, he ripped him off. All to obviously build the character that he does when he's rapping, because he raps a lot about slang and drugs.
Stuff that he knows nothing about.
I'm sure he knows about it. He was the security officer at a prison, so he probably met a lot of
Interesting characters.
and learned enough about how to pretend to be a character like that. But we go on with New Orleans in 1994. Police officers protected a cocaine supply warehouse containing 286 pounds of cocaine. And as a result of an FBI undercover investigation, 11 officers were paid nearly $100,000 by undercover agents, and they were convicted. So 2 more officers are under indictment and are scheduled to stand trial at the end of April in 1998. And of course, this is in relation as if it was written in 1998. And then we have a few more cities, but I think everyone here gets the point. Because there is still major cities as New York City, Philadelphia, Savannah, Washington, D.C., among a few others, where many officers have been convicted of corruption. And the ease of getting these drugs, it kind of stems from a situation that's kind of been around. Do you know what I'm talking about, Paul?
I'm not sure where you're going right now.
The CIA, man.
Oh, I thought you...
The CIA, man.
Oh, that's funny.
So
that's funny. I was totally like, whoa, where's Luke going?
Where's he
with
going?
this?
Yeah, he's a
I have no
genius.
idea. Yeah, wow. Wow, he's building up to something else that he didn't tell me about before the show.
Yeah,
but no, he's building up to the exact thing that I'm supposed to jump in on.
Just jump in for me.
Oh, man.
So, obviously, the CIA, for this episode, they have been involved in the drug trade since its inception, starting in the late 1940s. And I did not actually tell you about this, but there was more information before we get into the 70s and 80s, where the CIA
I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, did they come in the 40s or the 50s?
40s, late 40s.
Okay.
And they came in the late 40s, and they immediately right off the bat were already jumping in on corruption. So the very first corruption that they were corrupt activity they were being in part of was with a man named Lucky Luciano.
Oh, from the New York Mafia.
Yeah, from the New York Mafia. Yeah, the I forgot the name of it. The whatever the name is, I got it written here somewhere. And what Lucky Luciano was, he was the head of the New York Mafia, and it actually all started because Lucky Luciano helped the CIA in World War II give reconnaissance to the Italian military. And in return, when he was eventually arrested in the late 40s for mafia corruption and mafia activities, he was actually deported back to Italy. And when he was back in Italy, this is actually where the corrupt activities really started to pick up, because Luciano established the world's most successful narcotics syndicate. It was where Turkish morphine was smuggled through Lebanon to the French port of Marseille, where it was turned into high-grade number 4 heroin. And the mafia was the Corsican mafia. That's what the name of it was. But there were laboratories, the Corsican laboratories were in the port of Marseille. Marseille? Yeah. And then it was exported to mafia distributors to the United States.
So they were making heroin in the 40s?
Yes, they were. And the thing is, though, is that the CIA was funding the Corsican mafia through money and arms. This was to fight communism, the Communist Party in France in the 40s, in the 50s, early 50s, and they were trying to combat communism taking over there. So they were funding the Corsican, who were enemies of the Communist Party and multiple groups over there. So they're feeding them guns and money to try and fight that. Of course, that money was being used to help their heroin business.
Dealing.
Their dealing. So, since the late 1940s, we've already had the CIA, immediately, as soon as they were started, already funding groups for heroin who were using that to distribute it to America. That's where the main supply was going to, was America. So,
where did it come in America?
Unfortunately, I don't know which port or anything, but it was all mostly from like the New York area. Yeah, New York area.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't think, it's funny because like just growing up, like I always thought of like, I don't know exactly when, like I don't have a time period, but I think of the 50s and the 40s. Obviously after World War II, as a very wholesome time in America, and drugs weren't really a problem then until maybe the 60s. It certainly paints an interesting picture that kind of before that, during that wholesome time, it was like basically the groundwork was being laid for all the drugs to come to America.
Yeah, you're actually pretty right. But of course, opium was a huge issue.
Oh, that's true.
In the
People
early
aren't-
1900s.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it was already technically a problem in early 1900s America, which was brought over by the Chinese.
And it's a problem again.
It's a problem again, exactly. And so heroin was the biggest drug, illegal substance at that time, which eventually turned into cocaine and other things. But the first thing the CIA was really funding was the heroin trade. So that goes into Vietnam in the 70s, where the CIA funded and trained the Hmong to grow opium as their main source of income to fight communism, which eventually, of course, led to the GIs becoming addicted to heroin, and that heroin also almost fully went to Australia. So the CIA was funding the Hmong, which they actually trained the Hmong to stop growing rice and focus specifically on opium to try and make money to be able to fund their organization in fighting communism.
Man, I'm all for fighting communism, especially during that time period. But man, the old saying, do the ends justify the means?
That is a big thing I came across in all this research, that the government believes in the means justifying the ends. And throughout the entire time, it has wreaked havoc on the
Unintended consequences.
Is it though?
Well, man,
It's kind of a
scary
deep
to think
question.
that those
Yes.
are intended consequences.
Well, I mean, they trained the people in Vietnam to grow opium, and to ship it out to everywhere in the world in order to make money to fight communism. They knew what they were doing. They were intending on these people selling a very addictive and harmful drug to the world in the attempt to fight communism in another part of the world that would have no overall effect on our freedoms over here in America.
Well, I mean, they were always concerned with the spread of communism around the world. They didn't want it to grow and overtake, the rest of the world. That was the fear back during those time period.
Yeah, I understand the fear. I still stand by. I don't think that the means justify the ends. Communism could have taken over North Vietnam. I mean, how big of an effect would that have really had on anything?
Well, we'll never know.
I guess we will never know. Fortunately, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Fortunately. So, it then goes into...
I watched a lot of clips of Full Metal Jacket recently. Did you see that ever?
Oh, I've seen Full Metal Jacket. Yeah, multiple times.
I've never watched it all the way through, but I watched a lot of clips lately. I don't know what brought it up. I just...
Yeah, I love you a long time.
Maybe because of that, the one guy died, the drill instructor, the guy that played the drill instructor.
Yeah,
died
I
in
forgot
real life.
what his name was, the actor. I just keep on thinking of the woman. $5, anything you want.
See, that's not even to me. The movie's more about just watching Private Pile just
Kill himself?
descend into madness.
You want to see him get beaten up with bars of soap inside of what was it called?
I watched all those
Pillowcases?
Private Pile scenes, man. And I don't remember in the movie what happens immediately after the drill instructor dies, and then Pile
Shoots himself in the
shoots
head.
himself. Yeah.
I think it goes right into the scene.
It goes right into them being in Vietnam.
Yeah. I remember. I think that right after that was the scene that I was talking about, where $5, anything you want.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's actually exactly
Oh,
right after
I didn't
that.
know it went right into that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
I think
'Cause
it's on Netflix. Full
Yeah.
Metal Jacket.
It was. It's on my
Is it
queue.
gone?
But I haven't watched it again since I don't really know
Kind
if it's
of
on there anymore.
depressing movie.
Oh, extremely. Yeah, it's a great piece of film though.
Some of my friends they liked the Pile stuff, the Private Pile. Hey, watch, he's gonna get beaten up with soap here. And,
It's disturbing. You have
I
some
know.
sadistic friends.
we were like kids then.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
remember-
most kids are kind of sadistic.
Yeah, watch this guy get beat up.
Yeah, it's terrible. I was never. Nobody I knew was ever like that. Maybe I grew up with better people.
Maybe you did. I can't argue with that.
So,
I've been places with coworkers, and I was there with my friends. We went to like it was some kind of work event, and one of my coworkers was like, hey Paul, those guys over there, are they with you? That was my shady friends.
that was it, huh? They were,
Hey, those guys, are you with them? Are they with you?
and then
What are they doing here?
And then you just come back, no, they just got drunk and started talking to me.
No idea who they are.
Yeah, no clue. Why were you doing karaoke with them then, Paul?
That's kind of funny.
All right. Well, this does not end in the 70s, because in the 70s, they immediately moved from Vietnam and the Hmong to, in 1979, the CIA teamed up with Pakistan's Inter-Service Intelligence, ISI for short, to be short, and that's to organize the Mujahideen resistance in Soviet-occupied Afghanistan. The recipient of more than half the aid given to the Mujahideen rebels by the CIA alliance was Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. I couldn't really say his name, but
You were doing so good.
I did try and practice that. So Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. So the results were immediate. Gulbuddin's private Mujahideen army, Hezb-e Islami, was invaded some of Afghanistan's prime agricultural areas and persuaded its peasants to grow poppies. The opium was then brought across the Pakistani border to refineries under the protection of Pakistan's General Faisal Hug, where it was turned into number 4 heroin for export to Europe and America, which was...
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the rebels that we're funding, wasn't that Bin Laden and that kind of stuff?
At that time, that would be right around, I believe, Bin Laden, but there is a lot of that time where we were funding Bin Laden and training him. The CIA was training him at that time.
I mean, they were on our side then, because we were paying them to fight the Russians.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Because that was a time...
Proxy war.
Exactly, proxy wars. But the thing was is that this was actually the same timing as the Contras.
Oh, exactly. So in the 1980s, the CIA introduced, financed, and distributed drugs and used the profits to fund the Contras in Nicaragua. Reporter Gary Webb, who was a lot of people call a hero, he was a writer for the San Jose Mercury News, a small regional paper that nobody ever heard of. And the thing about the story that he published, it was in August 1996, published a story detailing the CIA had a hand in bringing tons of cocaine to the United States. The story was called Dark Alliance, and it's kind of sad because the San Jose Mercury News, the newspaper is still around, and that's that's the most famous thing that they're known for is this Gary Webb story, and they don't have the story actually published on their website.
Really?
They took it down. They were pressured. This is kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but they were pressured to take it down, and they took it down. They kind of like not retracted, but they backed off the story, basically, and they took it down. They never put it back up. I think they have stories where they talk about the story, but I actually found the whole Dark Alliance, like the website is still there. Dark Alliance, it's just under some other website. We could link it in the description.
Yeah, we definitely will. Really quick, who pressured them? Was it public pressure?
Well, this is kind of skipping ahead, but at that time...
Oh, if we're going to get into it later, continue with what you're talking about. We can talk about that.
Remind me to talk about that if I don't mention it.
Yeah, definitely.
So Gary Webb published a story called Dark Alliance, and he stated that the Nicaraguan Democratic Force, I'm not going to try and pronounce the Spanish name for it, otherwise known as the Contras, they were funded by the CIA, and through their leaders, a guy named Danilo Blandón. Blandón started working for the
Nicaraguan Democratic Force?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 1981. And he testified that whatever we were running in L.A., the profit was going to the Contra Revolution. At that time of the testimony, Blandón was a full-time informant of the DEA. So he was working with the CIA and the DEA. And Blandón, in front of a San Francisco grand jury, he testified in 1994, when Reagan get in power, Mr. Reagan get the power, and we start receiving a lot of money. And the people that was in charge, it was the CIA. So they didn't want to raise any money because they had got the money that they wanted. So basically what Mr. Blandone was saying is that they started getting taxpayer money to fund the Contras through the Reagan administration. But before that, they were getting the money from the CIA and selling drugs. Gary Webb called Blandone the Johnny Appleseed of crack in California. It was during then when drug dealers figured out, they figured out how to make crack in the early 1980s, basically. Don't need to go into explaining what crack cocaine is. In Los Angeles, crack cocaine spread mostly through the black communities. The Crips and the Bloods, they got distributed the cocaine, the crack cocaine, through a guy named Freeway Rick Ross.
Which it should be noted that one of the bloodiest gang wars ever in America has been between the Crips and the Bloods. I mean, the amount of death and innocent lives that have been hurt by these gang wars is staggering.
I remember hearing about that in the early 90s. I'm not sure what your familiarity with the Crips and the Bloods is.
Rap music.
That's how you learned about them?
That's how I learned about them, yeah.
That's kind of funny. So in 1987, Ross, he had one of the biggest cocaine. He had a nationwide distribution network of cocaine and crack cocaine. And then after they broke this story, the San Jose Mercury News, first it was praised by the media. It was like a shocking story, and the thing at the time, in what was it, 96 when the story came out, they posted the story on the website. Now that allowed people at the time, because it was the San Jose Mercury News,
which was an online publication at the time.
Right. It was online, so that allowed millions of people to see the story who ordinarily wouldn't, and that was kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Or it brought, I could read any newspaper in the country now. That wasn't really as prevalent in the early 90s. We were still on AOL back then.
Yeah. San Jose. What Mercury News would have only been to people in San Jose if it wasn't for the internet. So this kind of gave the ability to be widespread.
Right.
Yeah, which it was.
The story got very big. The CIA was accused of racism because they brought crack cocaine here into the United States, and
it was affecting the inner cities.
In inner cities, black communities. There was a lot of calls that it was racist, which I don't know if I could argue against that. I did see a quote from Gary Webb that he basically thought that the CIA wasn't necessarily trying to target black people, but it was just the way that the cards fell, and the people who were selling the cocaine in Los Angeles at the time were the Crips and the Bloods, like we mentioned.
Yeah, we had that one guy, Michael Rupert, the police officer from L.A. at the time. We do, of course, have the clip of him exposing the CIA's involvement with this.
You want to play it?
Yeah, we get this here.
Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
That was after the Dark Alliance story. That was the CIA director was at that town hall meeting.
Yeah, it was
which is crazy that the CIA director of CIA would come and sit in a town hall meeting in South Central Los Angeles.
Yeah, it was unusual to watch. I've never seen that before, or I'm sorry, not before, but after.
I think I don't know if the whole thing is on YouTube, but C-SPAN covered the whole thing.
Yeah, actually, I have a few links I can post for people to watch that. I was able to find a couple clips of that entire sit down, but I don't know if you people who are listening, they were able to hear that cheering that came after he actually exposed that.
I mean, the African American community in Los Angeles, they were justifiably outraged.
Yeah,
most
definitely.
You should see how just passionate they were about this story at that time. Yeah,
and most of those people inside that were clapping and cheering there were actually black members of, I'm guessing, of L.A. And they really
to hear a police officer say that really brought some credibility to their
most definitely
story.
And Gary Webb.
And Gary Webb too.
Exactly. It was needed that this man came out and it was it was pretty amazing that actually happened, and we have it recorded, which is
Yeah,
great.
for posterity there.
Yeah.
So eventually, Gary, the media, they liked the story. Gary Webb was all over the media, and then all of a sudden things started to turn on Gary Webb. The media went against him. They started picking him apart, picking the story apart, saying it couldn't possibly be true. I think like some newspapers like the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post. I think a lot of it was professional jealousy. They got scooped by the San Jose Mercury News. They got scooped the Washington Post. Like, and it's also possible that the CIA may have had a hand in the media going after Gary Webb.
Yeah, I mean, it could be conspiratorial to believe that the media, mainstream media, newspapers, and everything are co-opted by the CIA. But I believe that
I don't know if they've co-opted,
Maybe
maybe co-opted, but they at least have people
Yeah, okay, they might actually have people
working in these places.
Yeah, definitely, I could agree with that then.
I don't know if co-opted might be too strong.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't totally disagree with that, but I would say at least CIA have people in it.
Yeah, we'll stand
and
on
a
the
major
safe
note.
side of that one. We'll just say that maybe some influencers inside the organization.
Influencers, that's a good word.
Yeah.
So Gary Webb, he eventually got let go from the San Jose Mercury News. He wrote a couple of books about this, including Kill a Messenger. And then eventually in 2004, Gary Webb was found dead in his home from 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The death was ruled a suicide.
So 2 gunshot wounds to the head.
2 gunshot wounds to the head.
And it was ruled as suicide.
Ruled a suicide.
Now, what are your views on that?
I mean, I did some reading that there have been suicides where people shoot themselves twice in the head. But Gary Webb, he's 49 years old at the time. It just seems unlikely.
Yeah, his
Although
wife,
he was going through a divorce.
yeah, his wife
the
did
time.
say that he was depressed, and there was a lot of things, I guess, going on with him at that time.
Webb wanted to be a journalist. I mean, that was his dream.
Yeah, and he was kind of being outcasted by the media and the exact influences he was trying to join in the ranks. You know, he wanted to be a journalist. But yeah, he was depressed at the time, and there are stories of people who will shoot themselves once, not die, and shoot themselves again, and that'll finish them off.
I did find a little bit of stuff saying that Gary Webb was working on another book during that time, and then that's why he was suicided.
Suicided.
I like that.
Yeah,
I heard that on the interwebs.
on the interwebs.
Oh, I hate it when people call it the interwebs, by the way. I know it's totally sidetracked.
People
but-
your age would say that, right?
Yeah, right. We like to call it the information superhighway. Actually, I do kind of like information super. Oh, you're laughing, and you might even be backing away from the microphone there.
Oh man, that is something that
Information superhighway?
By the time that I was going through school,
The interwebs,
was at the
yeah.
very tail end of someone calling it the information superhighway.
That's a way cooler name
that's
than
what-
interwebs.
That's what my teachers would say because of how impressed they were with it. You know, they were old enough where it was such an impressive feat that the internet was so big.
You probably don't even remember looking stuff up in encyclopedias, do you?
Oh yeah, we still had the Dewey Decimal.
The
What's the system?
Well, that's a library. Libraries still use that today.
Do they
I think so.
now cards?
Maybe.
Oh, either way, I remember
We'll
I
have
had
to get a librarian on the show to talk
Yeah,
about
we'll
it.
have to do that. I actually had to learn that. Like they taught that in school still when I was a kid.
I remember I learned that.
Yeah,
I don't
so-
remember it now. Do you remember it now?
Well, I don't have kids, so I don't know. I can't find that out. But I know that they don't have that anymore in libraries. I have to think mine was at the tail end of that system being taught. We still had like the computer.
So what do they
class.
do in libraries now?
Computers. Everything's computerized.
But they still have books, right?
Yeah, you just look it on the computer. When was the last time you've been to a library?
Yeah, but how do they,
You type in what book you want, and it tells you where it's at.
Yeah, it tells you where it's at, but isn't it still by the Dewey Decimal System?
Oh, I couldn't tell you that. I don't really know how the system. I'm not a computer whiz. I don't know how these.
Useful idiots, go to the library. That's going to be a good podcast. We're here at the library and trying to find out. Shh. Okay. Are they gone?
Yeah, good.
All right. So we're going to try and find out if they still use the Dewey Decimal System. Right here on Useful Idiots.
Okay.
You like that as a good future idea for a show?
I like that idea.
Useful Idiots go to the library.
Yeah, you can actually book rooms over at the library by my house. Maybe we'll book one and start
What?
walking around.
Like we could stay there?
Yeah, we can stay there.
Stay
and record.
overnight at the library?
No, you can book a room to record in.
Oh,
study.
hey, that's a good idea for...
Not if we're trying to make money. If it's
No.
monetized, we're not allowed to do it. So good thing we don't make money yet.
Oh. You're doing shots fired on ourselves.
On ourselves, yeah.
Yeah, nah, I don't know about that. I do have a couple of quotes from Gary Webb that are kind of poignant here on our discussion about Gary Webb and crack cocaine in Los Angeles and the drugs in the United States. He says, I was winning awards, getting raises, lecturing on college campuses, appearing on TV shows, and judging journalism contests. And then I wrote some stories that made me realize how sadly misplaced my bliss had been. The reason I enjoyed such smooth sailing for so long hadn't been, as I assumed, because I was careful and diligent and good at my job. The truth was that in those years, I hadn't written anything important enough to suppress. How do you like that?
Yeah, it was kind of a profound ending there.
I got another one. This one's a little bit longer, so bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
Talk amongst yourselves for a second here. All right, I'm ready to go. One of the questions I've been asked many times since this story broke is this. Now that the facts are out there, what can we do? My answer, depressing and cynical as it may be, is always the same. Not much. Not now. And certainly not until the American public and its congressional representatives regain control of the CIA and shred the curtain of secrecy that keeps us from discovering these crimes of state until it's too late. Perhaps when government officials who presided over these outrages are safely in their crypts and their apologists and cheerleaders are buried with them, future historians can finally call these men to account for the miseries they caused. Even if that's all that ever happens, it will be fitting and just, because the favorable judgment of history is ultimately what they craved.
You
Gary Webb.
you hear that quote and you wish that maybe what he said was true, but I don't really see I don't see any change.
I think they're going to be replaced. The people that he's referring to at that time period in that story, they're going to be replaced by people who think and do exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Yeah. It's not going to change until the like he did say, the congressional representatives have to regain control of the CIA. I don't really see that happening, but it would be nice if they do. Now, of course, it's been what, about 12 years maybe since 14 years since he died, and about 20 years since that quote was or about there, and
2004 was 14. God, it was 14.
yeah, it was a
years
long
ago.
time.
Damn
It was
it.
a long time ago. I really haven't seen anybody wake up to this, and I don't see anybody still condemning the secrecy that the CIA and the rest of the government, the shadow government, has.
I feel like, from what I know about black communities, they're in tune with this story.
Yeah, you're.
Mainstream white America or different parts of the country, they don't believe this.
Yeah,
It's too far-fetched sounding to be true in their minds.
Yeah, I
and,
agree with you, and I could see where some animosity would come
I
from.
mean, when
black
I first heard this story, I didn't believe it.
No, I
Years
didn't
ago.
either. I remember when I was younger, and they would say things like the CIA introduced crack to the black community, and that was just
It just sounds crazy.
it's the dumbest sounding thing
It
I've
sounds
ever heard.
conspiratorial.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's because of the way that it's worded. People say that the CIA introduced crack to the black community as if there was CIA agents walking around with a new drug in their pocket called crack cocaine, and they're just handing it out to black people in the inner city. When in reality, it's just that they funded the people and gave them a path to bring in the cocaine to these specific areas, and it just so happens that those areas that were affected were the inner cities where the black community mainly resides, and that's much more believable when you say it like that.
I mean, it's just sad. It's sad to think about what our country might have been if they didn't do this. You know, like, what if there was no crack cocaine in the United States?
Well, there wouldn't
How
be
many lives have been affected by it?
Many. Yeah, I don't know. I
Sorry,
just,
I'm bringing you down there. I know.
yeah, a little bit. Because I definitely know that the black community finds this to be a very touchy subject, something that they really believe the government has wronged them. And a lot of people say things like, why don't white people believe this and why do black people distrust the government like that? They always bring it back to slavery, that the black people still have the bad taste in their mouth, that they know they can distrust the government, while white people haven't really had that issue.
Well, the white people that I guess we're generalizing about a little bit, they kind of have their hands over their ears and their eyes closed as far as stories like this about the CIA and drug running and Gary Webb. You know, it's so outlandish to them.
Yeah, as it was for both of us.
Many years ago.
Yeah, many years. Yeah, it wasn't even many years ago for me. It was only a couple years ago.
I'm not sure. You know, I vaguely remember seeing Gary Webb on the Montel Williams show in the 90s or early 2000s or whenever I caught it. And, you know, it was just another TV show back then. I didn't really put much thought into it. And then years later, I started hearing about Gary Webb again. And then they released the movie Kill the Messenger in 2014.
With Jeremy Renner?
Jeremy Renner. Good movie. Good flick, by the way. It's pretty close to what we talked about here with Gary Webb. They pretty much get the whole story. I don't think they only mention his suicide at the end. You don't get to see that in the movie or anything like that. Sorry for the spoiler there.
Yeah, nice. Well, it's based off of a true story anyway, so obviously people would have known that. And you're saying that was based off of Gary Webb, the Kill the Messenger movie?
Yeah, it is. It is the story of Gary Webb breaking the story.
You showed me the trailer. I've never watched it, but you have shown me the trailer, and it looked very intense. So I don't really know exactly when I watch that, but it'll probably be soon. There was also the movie with Tom Cruise that just came out.
There was a similar movie with Tom Cruise.
Yeah, it just came out very recently where he is one of the cocaine runners, the drug runners.
So does the Tom Cruise movie, is that the same? Is it talking about the Contras and all that, or?
I believe it's Latin America, so it could be, but I unfortunately don't know exactly which country that's supposed to be from.
Yeah, Nicaragua, Colombia, a lot of those countries had that stuff going on.
Yeah, I think it could have been Colombia for this specific movie. So I don't remember what the guy's name was that was the movie was based around.
I'm sorry, I put you on the spot there.
It's okay. I'm sure people can go and Google it and find out for themselves. They have the most powerful tool in human history to find out if they want.
Google?
Called Google.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a bold statement there.
Bold statement.
Most powerful tool in human history.
Sorry, fire? Is fire going to beat Google? No, it's
no.
not. So, this was one of those episodes where I knew about this Contra funding, but I did not know about the other ones that I brought up to you. The Afghanistan in the 70s, and then Venezuela, and the CIA funding an anti-drug unit in Venezuela in 1993, before 1993, but released in 1993, the information where they smuggled 2,000 pounds of cocaine into America. And then, there was, of course, Vietnam. There was just in Italy with the Corsican mafia.
Well, even now in Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan again, yeah.
The opium was almost wiped out years ago.
Exactly.
And now it's back.
It's back with a vengeance. It's the number one
I
producer
wonder what's
right
going
now.
on there.
Yeah, number one producer in Afghanistan.
Why do we still have troops there?
Well, to protect the poppy seed, the poppy plants.
Oh, right.
That's exactly what it's for. So, there's a lot of things that I was able to learn from researching this episode that I'm glad that I actually was able to find out.
We're even more cynical now. Yay.
So that's 4 episodes in a row now of
we need to do a show about sunshine and rainbows.
It's not dark enough.
No.
No, it's not dark enough. We need to go darker.
Why sunshine and rainbows will never come back again.
Yeah. Living in America, it's like that.
Ooh.
So now we were able to touch on this massive issue about the CIA running drugs and funding people who grow the heroin and the poppies and cocaine, and they were able to.
Well, the ironic thing is that the CIA brings in the drugs, right? Or at least some of the drugs. And then Joe Bob drug dealer goes to jail for doing the same thing that the government's doing.
Yeah, Freeway Ricky Ross.
Right. He was in
situations.
jail for a long time. I think he's out now.
Yeah, he's out now. He's actually
He's got a book.
Yeah, he's combating the youth. He's trying to keep young we'll say black people mostly off the streets from selling. He's got a movement, a charitable organization where he's out there trying to combat.
Well, man, if he could get people off the drugs, man. I mean, I don't know. What I'm trying to
selling.
say.
No, he's trying to keep him from selling.
Keep him from selling. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, like all the lives that man has touched and destroyed with selling the crack cocaine.
Yeah, probably wouldn't have ever happened if it wasn't for the CIA, though.
Well, yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. So we were able to see the fact that all this damage done from the illegalization of these drugs and the CIA funding it. And I think that we're going to have to record our next episode, Paul, and I think we both can agree with this, that we're going to have to talk about the history of drug legalization / illegalization and the outlawing of these drugs. And I think we'll have to go and touch on that in the next episode and explain to everybody the American history of the outlawing of drugs.
A deep dive.
Yeah, we'll do a deep dive.
You think people are going to die in this story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dark, right?
I guess. I mean, that's
Perfect.
that's all our show has been about. Death.
That's all our
lately.
show has been about is death.
Death and the government strangling people, basically. Not strangling people physically, but Big Brother.
Big Brother.
You know, like the China social credit score.
Yeah, and everything else we've talked about. But go ahead and tune in, guys, for next week.
Oh, wait. Should we tease what else we're going to do?
Oh, yeah.
This weekend?
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
This is going to lighten the mood, hopefully, a little bit.
It's lighting the mood for both of us.
But we're going to do the Useful Idiots movie review of Avengers Infinity War.
Woo!
And, man, we just need to do something that keeps our minds off of all the tragedy and misery that our show has been talking about the last month or so.
Yeah, and if anybody is a big movie buff or just action movies fans or comic book fans, we intend on trying to do a regular show about reviewing movies that come out.
We want to do some pop culture stuff.
Yeah, some pop culture stuff, and maybe wrestling because you're a fan of wrestling. So
That'll be hard for you because you're not much of a wrestling fan.
I can give an outsider's perspective on it, though, and I think
that looks dumb.
that was fake.
Yeah, there you go.
That was fake. Oh, wow. He twisted his nipples.
And that'll be how I'm sounding when I watch, if we ever decide to do reviews of regular sporting events.
Yeah.
That looks fake. He didn't even hit him with the chair. What kind of crap is that?
Yeah, so I hope that there's some movie buffs that listen to the show and tune in. We're not sure we're going to post it yet. It'll most likely still be on our website, but for sure we're going to post it under the Useful Idiots name. So
I don't know what we'll call it.
Yeah, we're not too sure what we're going to call it yet, but we'll have that all figured out by the episode, which will be
This
released.
could be the beginning of us becoming a movie review site.
Yeah, completely push away all this depressing politics. No, we're not going to get rid of that.
No. It'll be our pet project.
It'll be our pet project, exactly. So, I do want to thank everyone for tuning in for today's episode. Please be a useful idiot. Subscribe to us on YouTube at The Useful Idiots Show. Follow us on Twitter at Useful Idiot Show. Subscribe and rate the podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen. And visit our website at usefulidiotshow.com. We do, of course, expect to see you back for the next episode.